My nephew, Chen's head was flattened by my sister-in-law, Lily, who forced him to sleep in that position. I warned her that if she didn't fix it immediately, it would be too late, but Lily looked proud. A flat head, she said, meant good fortune and luck. When Chen grew up with a flattened skull that looked like it had been hit by a frying pan, he became Flathead, the target of his classmates' ridicule. Lily constantly grumbled to him, "It's all your Aunt Victoria's fault." Years ago, she insisted that a flat head was better than a round one, ruining your life. Later, I accidentally fell, hitting my head hard on the ground, suffering a severe concussion. Chen came to the hospital to visit me. He deliberately supported my head, a twisted smile on his face. "Auntie, your good fortune isn't quite flat enough yet. Let me help you." He suddenly slammed the back of my head against the wall. My eyes went black, and I never woke up again. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Lily stuffing that rigid Xinhua dictionary under Chen's head as he lay in his bassinet. "Oh my, look at our Chen's little head. The more he sleeps, the flatter it gets, the more fortune he'll have." Lily cradled her nephew, Chen, in his bassinet, a triumphant expression on her face. She turned his flattened head towards all the relatives, as if wanting them to examine it thoroughly with a magnifying glass. The once round little head, propped up by a hardcover book, had developed a distinctly flat curve, looking as if it had been struck by a frying pan. "Look," she declared, "this is a sign of a full forehead and a square jaw, a blessed appearance. Our Chen is destined to become a high-ranking official later in life." Lily's voice rang out, her face beaming with joy. She even pointed specifically to the Xinhua dictionary under Chen's head, smugly stating, "I chose this one on purpose. It's sturdy and effective." I held my teacup, my fingers unconsciously tracing the rim. Memories of my past life flooded back like a sudden tide. At that full-month celebration, I, like a fool, had tried to use science and history to enlighten her. "Lily, this flat head is not a good omen. Look at these historical documents. The ancients valued a round skull, like a small cauldron, considering it a noble feature. Furthermore, from a medical perspective, a baby's skull is soft, and prolonged pressure will affect brain development." Before I could finish, Lily cut me off with a sneer. "Victoria, you're a history professor. Why do you believe in such outdated things? What era are we living in, still believing in feudal superstitions? I think you're just jealous because my Chen is blessed with good fortune." She glared at me, her eyes clearly conveying ignorant. Yes, I am that ignorant Victoria. The aunt who tried to use historical documents and scientific knowledge to save her nephew. And what was the result? My nephew grew up with a flattened head, enduring ridicule from childhood to adulthood. She blamed all her resentment on me, the supposed culprit. I accidentally fell, hitting my head hard on the ground, suffering a severe concussion. In the hospital, she came to visit me. On her twisted face, there was no pity, only the glee of revenge. She deliberately supported my head, a sinister smile playing on her lips. "Auntie, it seems that banana peel wasn't enough to make you fall." My eyes went black. I lost all consciousness. Reborn into this life, I looked at the nephew in the bassinet, the child whose entire life was about to be ruined by stubbornness, and I smiled coldly to myself. This time, I wouldn't be that ignorant fool. My sister-in-law was absolutely right. I set down my teacup, a subtle smile playing on my lips, my voice carrying a hint of surprise as if I'd just had an epiphany. "Oh my, why didn't I think of that? Sister-in-law truly has foresight. This isn't wisdom ordinary people possess." Hearing this, Lily's smile grew even brighter. She hugged Chen, her posture straightening a little. "Right? I told you my judgment was good. Victoria, don't think that just because you've read many books, sometimes the wisdom of our ancestors is more useful than your science." I nodded continuously, like a humble, eager student. Sister-in-law is right. Before, I was too rigid with those stiff documents, completely stuck in a dead end. I pretended to tap my forehead in annoyance, but thanks to your reminder, I've been enlightened. I cleared my throat, my gaze sweeping across the relatives in the room, a characteristic academic smile of a history professor appearing on my face. Actually, sister-in-law's statement about a flat head bringing good fortune has a basis in fact. I shifted my tone, becoming eloquent, just like an expert on a podium. In our ancient physiognomy, there is indeed a saying, "A round head and a flat nape, wealth and nobility will naturally come." Isn't this flat nape a flat curve, yet still somewhat rounded? I pointed to Chen's nape, my expression serious as if conducting an important academic argument. Furthermore, everyone, consider this. Wealthy and noble families in ancient times, to make their children look distinctive, came up with all sorts of methods. Things like jade sleeping pillows or wooden headboards weren't they all to achieve this kind of flat yet shapely head. This proves that in some specific historical periods, a flat head was a symbol of status and position. I spoke with increasing fervor, even quoting a few ancient texts I'd fabricated myself, making all the relatives nod continuously. Though they didn't fully understand, they felt very convinced. So, sister-in-law, I concluded, this isn't some folk method. This is clearly a 1,000-year-old child-rearing method passed down by our ancestors. You have truly rediscovered the essence of the ancients. I praised her sincerely. Lily's heart blossomed upon hearing this. She hugged Chen, her gaze towards me completely changed. From an ignorant fool, I had become an enlightened, understanding person. Oh my, Victoria, what you're saying makes me feel even more reassured. She couldn't stop smiling, her face filled with satisfaction. She even lightly patted the back of Chen's head as if saying, "See, even your aunt agrees now, your flat head is truly a blessing." I watched her triumphant face, the corners of my lips slightly curled. Lure the enemy by letting them relax, ride the current to push the boat. This head of Chen's, his life is surely destined to be flat. And I will personally pave this path of good fortune for him until he truly feels how heavy this fortune is. No sooner had the full-month celebration ended than Lily impatiently stopped me at the door. "Victoria, tell me more about the benefits of a flat head. I want to write it all down." She pulled out a small notebook, her eyes gleaming with fervent enthusiasm. I looked at her, a cold smile in my heart, but on the outside, I maintained the gentle demeanor of a scholar. "Sister-in-law, this isn't something that can be explained in a few sentences. Behind it lies a whole system of child-rearing wisdom." I deliberately spoke in a profound manner. Since Chen possesses such innate good fortune, nurturing him in this way becomes even more crucial. We must design a personalized fortune baby nurturing plan for him. A nurturing plan? Lily's eyes widened, as if she had just discovered a new continent. "Exactly," I nodded, beginning to weave the elaborate lie I had carefully prepared. For example, in addition to sleeping on a hard pillow, his head must be massaged using special techniques at specific hours to gather good fortune. Regarding diet, he should eat foods that shape like what they're nourishing, such as walnuts, but not round ones, they must be flat ones. I fabricated and packaged these half-baked folk customs and pseudoscientific ideas into a meticulously curated theory. Lily listened raptly, jotting down every word in her notebook. Seeing her devout expression, I revealed my ultimate goal. "Sister-in-law, it's such a great set of child-rearing experiences. It would be a shame for only you to know about it. With social media so developed now, you could totally start a blog or social media account and share your flathead baby nurturing experiences." I subtly guided her. "Think about it, this would not only accumulate virtue for Chen, but also help other parents who want their children to have good fortune. By then, Chen will be the role model for all fortune babies, and you will be the ambassador for flat heads." Ambassador for flat heads, this title struck right at Lily's vanity. She seemed to envision herself being sought after by countless admiring mothers, becoming a guru in the parenting world. "Yes, you're right," she slapped her thigh, excitedly standing up. "Why didn't I think of that? Victoria, you truly are a godsend to our family." That very evening, a social media account named Flathead Fortune Baby Nurturing Journal was successfully registered. Lily poured all her passion into her ambassadorial career. Every day, she took photos, posted updates, documenting the progress of Chen's flattening head, accompanied by the captions I specifically designed for her. Day 108. Today Chen's head is flatter than ever, good fortune +1. Traditional massage technique, mothers who want to learn give a like. Day 120. Science popularization. Why are flat-headed babies smarter? Because the brain's developmental space is more concentrated, energy isn't dispersed. These outlandish claims, accompanied by photos of Chen's distorted, flattened skull, quickly attracted attention in the mom and baby community. Some cheered, while others naturally expressed doubts. Rational voices began appearing in the comments section, advising her not to ruin her child for feudal superstitions. Lily snorted contemptuously, dismissing all dissenters as jealous and lacking good fortune. Furthermore, encouraged by me, she even learned to block and control comments. She delved deeper and deeper into this path of stubbornness, and I was merely the one who handed her the first knife. The knife was drawn. Next, I only needed to silently watch her use this knife to personally sever her son's life. On Chen's first birthday, the family held another celebration. By this time, the back of my nephew's head was as flat as a cutting board. Viewed from the side, his entire skull had an extremely unnatural shape. Lily's Flathead Fortune Baby Nurturing Journal account, after a year of activity, had amassed tens of thousands of followers, making her quite a celebrity in the mom and baby community. Her parenting post finally went viral that day. An article titled, "Exposing the Flathead Guru Who Glorifies Harming Her Child," was shared by a large parenting account. Overnight, its readership surpassed 1 million. The article detailed Lily's absurd claims, accompanied by frightening photos of Chen's flattened head through various stages. Finally, the article included several professional science popularization pieces by pediatricians, clearly pointing out the dangers that this artificial cranial deformity could bring, from aesthetic impact to the potential for torticollis, and even affecting the development of certain brain functions. The storm of public opinion suddenly erupted. The comment section of Lily's account was completely submerged. Angry netizens, rational parents, and professional doctors vehemently criticized her parenting experiences. "This is ignorance, this is abuse. How can someone ruin their child for their pathetic vanity? Take the child to the hospital immediately. Correction might still be possible." My brother, Frank, was called in by his supervisor. My mother was pointed at and whispered about at the market. The entire family was thrown into an unprecedented chaos due to Lily's social media fame. Lily collapsed. She called me, crying, asking what to do. I sat in my bright office, casually flipping through Song Dynasty historical documents, and spoke to her in the calmest tone possible. "Sister-in-law, a tall tree catches the wind. Chen's good fortune is too great. It will naturally attract the jealousy and challenges of common people. This is the hardship he must endure before achieving great things." I did not participate in any online discussions. As a history professor, I calmly shared a few popular science articles about ancient head-shaping practices for children, without commenting or naming anyone. This ambiguous attitude, in the eyes of some, became evidence that I supported Lily. My enlightenment empowered Lily. She wiped away her tears, rallied her spirits, and began fiercely arguing with everyone online. She defined all criticism as challenges to her good fortune, using harsh words to scold netizens for not wishing others well. She delved deeper and deeper into this path of stubbornness. I hung up the phone, took a sip of tea. The tea was fragrant, the sunlight outside the window was beautiful, but this fire was not yet burning brightly enough. When Chen was 3 years old, Lily finally got an opportunity she had always dreamed of. A local TV parenting show called Facing Our Beloved Babies invited her to participate as a representative of her special parenting method, along with Chen. "Victoria, I'm going to be on TV." Lily's voice on the phone trembled with excitement. "Does this mean Chen's good fortune is finally recognized by everyone?" "Of course," I smiled, my voice full of encouragement. "This is a wonderful opportunity to show those ignorant people how healthy and blessed Chen is. Sister-in-law, you must prepare well and promote our flathead parenting experience." I hung up, and the smile on my face deepened. I contacted the director of Facing Our Beloved Babies through a former classmate who worked at the TV station. I didn't badmouth Lily, but rather used a tone of sharing an unusual story to reveal some information. "My sister-in-law has done a lot of research on baby head shapes. She believes a flat head is a sign of good fortune, which is quite interesting, actually. In ancient times, there were indeed similar customs. However, modern medicine seems to suggest that excessive head flattening can lead to some developmental problems, such as flat head syndrome, and can even resemble some symptoms of cranial deformities. The degree of this is very difficult to grasp. Oh, I'm just rambling, of course. You professional program makers surely know more than I do." I gently delivered a few bombs wrapped in sweet candy. On the day the show aired, our whole family sat in front of the TV. The program began. Lily and Chen, brimming with confidence, sat on the guest couch. She eloquently propagated her fortune-bringing theory. However, when the camera zoomed in on Chen, the atmosphere in the studio visibly shifted. Under the high-definition lens, Chen's nape, flat as if shaved by a knife, looked particularly prominent and deformed. Unaccustomed to the bright lights, his eyes seemed vacant, and his reactions were slower than those of children his age. The host changed her tone and smiled, asking, "Ms. Lily, we noticed that Chen's head shape is indeed very unique." Recently, there have also been some discussions online suggesting that this head shape might affect a child's visual development and vestibular balance. What are your thoughts on this? This question was precisely what I had disclosed to the director. Lily's face flushed crimson. She hadn't expected the show to create difficulties on the spot. That's nonsense, that's jealousy. My Chen is perfectly fine. What do you people who lack good fortune understand? She almost yelled back, her words harsh, her attitude out of control. The pediatrician invited to the scene tried to explain from a scientific perspective, but Lily completely ignored him, only repeating, good fortune, and physiognomy, even criticizing the expert as a pawn of Western medicine, ignorant of ancestral wisdom. The entire program turned into a farce. Chen's flat head became the focus of discussion for all viewers, and Lily's yelling, out-of-control demeanor during the show further created widespread aversion and suspicion. In front of the TV, my mother's face was ashen, my brother silently smoked. I turned off the TV and softly said, "Sister-in-law also meant well for her child, she just has a bit of a hot temper." My brother aggressively stubbed out his cigarette in the ashtray, casting a complex glance at me. I knew the seeds of doubt had silently sprouted in my brother's heart. Chen entered kindergarten at age 5. Not long after, the teacher met with Lily, gently reporting that Chen seemed slower than his peers in learning. He had difficulty concentrating, reacted slowly to the teacher's instructions, and wasn't very sociable. Lily, far from worried, puffed out her chest. My Chen is great wisdom appearing foolish. His fortune comes late. Children with great fortune are all like this when they're young, not ostentatious. The teachers don't understand. This is real potential. She proudly told the teacher. The teacher was speechless, taken aback by her theories. I listened, my heart completely unruffled, and promptly expressed my agreement. Sister-in-law is absolutely right. True geniuses aren't child prodigies. Look, even my brother was called a fool by his teachers when he was young. As I spoke, I pulled a few books from the bookshelf. I have some books here on ancient child-rearing methods and potential development. Take them home and read them. They might help Chen during his late-blooming fortune phase. Lily was overjoyed. Those books were meticulously selected by me. Their covers bore eye-catching titles like Compendium of Materia Medica and Child Rearing and Ancient Genius Nurturing Manual. But their content was a product of my patchwork and distortion of meaning. They included chapters encouraging the use of thought communication instead of language to cultivate a child's spiritual abilities. There was a theory advocating minimizing a child's perception of specific objects to protect their innate spiritual essence. There were even absurd methods like special meditation and still sitting to help children open their celestial eyes. For a normal child, these things might just be baseless stories, but for a child who was already developmentally delayed and needed proper guidance and intervention, this was nothing short of poison. She no longer taught Chen to count or recognize characters, citing the reason as protecting his spiritual essence. Instead, every day she forced him to sit quietly in a corner to feel the so-called cosmic energy. Chen's already chaotic cognitive world became even more tangled. He became increasingly quiet, his eyes growing emptier. Sometimes he would sit alone staring at the wall for hours, mumbling to himself. Lily, however, believed this was a sign that her son was about to awaken and that his good fortune was accumulating energy. Occasionally, I would visit and see my nephew sitting in the corner like a wooden puppet, my heart devoid of pity. In my past life, when he slammed my head against the wall, did he hesitate even a little? In this life, let his most loving mother personally orchestrate the development of his fortune and wisdom. My nephew, at 7 years old, was ready for elementary school. Lily's goal was the city's best key elementary school. She believed only such a school was worthy of her blessed child. But my brother, Frank, was uncertain. He clearly saw Chen's condition in recent years. Worried, he had approached me privately several times, sighing that his son couldn't even do simple addition and subtraction. That day, my mother called me home. At the dinner table, she finally spoke. "Victoria, you're a university professor with many connections. Could you see if you can pull some strings to get your nephew into that key school? He is your blood nephew, after all." My hand, holding food, paused in midair. My blood nephew. In my past life, for this blood nephew's education, I had tirelessly run around, using all my connections to get him into the best school. But what was the result? I died by his hand. I put down my chopsticks, looking at my mother's expectant face, my heart as cold as ice. Mother, of course, I will try, I began, my voice sincere. However, I think it's better to follow sister-in-law's opinion on this matter. I turned to Lily. She's a bit displeased that Mother is begging me. Sister-in-law, I think Mother's and Brother's worries are unnecessary. What kind of child is Chen? He's a child with great blessings, I said profoundly. The proverb says, true gold fears no fire. If we use connections to push him in, it will, on the contrary, diminish his nobility and even harm his good fortune. I looked directly into Lily's eyes, speaking each word clearly. He who is truly blessed will naturally be helped by heaven. Just let Chen rely on his innate good fortune to take that entrance exam. I believe that the school teachers will recognize that he is no ordinary person simply by seeing him. This is truly a carp transforming into a dragon. He who is blessed will naturally be blessed, innate good fortune, a carp transforming into a dragon. These words struck exactly at Lily's vanity. She immediately straightened her back, her face regaining its familiar blind confidence. Victoria is right, our Chen doesn't need to enter through the back door. She glanced at my brother. You people worry too much. Don't I know my son's capabilities? Just wait and see, he will surely surprise everyone. And so, under Lily's insistence, Chen, without any prior tutoring for the exam, was taken to the entrance exam room of the Key Elementary School. The result was predictable. Faced with questions about basic geometry, logic, and mathematics, Chen's mind was blank. He couldn't sit still in the exam room and eventually even cried. The scores were released, dismal. The doors of the Key Elementary School were firmly shut to him. My brother Frank slumped onto the sofa, looking as if he had aged 10 years overnight. Lily, meanwhile, was furious at home. She wasn't angry that her son hadn't tried hard, but angry at the school. They are blind, a bunch of short-sighted fools who fundamentally don't recognize that Chen is a precious gem. This is their loss, she shrieked, her unwilling shouts filling the entire house. I quickly offered her a glass of water, softly comforting her. Sister-in-law, don't be angry. Perhaps that small temple couldn't contain a great statue like our Chen. Chen eventually enrolled in a regular elementary school with average teaching quality. The disaster began on his very first day. Hey, look at that kid's head. Why is it so flat? Haha, he looks like a paper character from a cartoon. The innocent but cruel mockery of the children was like countless small needles piercing Chen's sensitive nerves. His flat head became his most prominent label, a never-ending joke. Coupled with his slow reactions and poor academic performance, he quickly became an isolated and bullied target in class. Finally, after being surrounded by a few boys who patted the back of his head and shouted, "Smash the watermelon," Chen exploded. Like a provoked small animal, he lunged and punched another boy until the teacher pulled them apart. Lily received a call from the school and immediately rushed over like a lit firecracker. She didn't inquire about the cause of the incident, nor did she comfort her injured son. Instead, she loudly yelled in the teacher's office. "They're bullying my Chen, they're jealous." Jealous because my son has good fortune? She pointed a finger at the homeroom teacher's nose, her voice shrill. What kind of student management does your school have? Letting a bunch of thugs bully someone blessed with good fortune? I demand that you immediately expel those kids and make their parents apologize. The school was in a complete mess, and the other parents were no pushovers either. A chaotic brawl broke out. I arrived at the school amidst the pandemonium. First, I pulled the agitated Lily back, adopting the demeanor of a concerned family member. Sister-in-law, calm down. Getting angry isn't worth harming your health. I pulled her aside and lowered my voice, speaking as if offering a confidential strategy. Confronting the teachers and the other parents directly like this won't solve anything. They're many, we're few, and we'll be at a disadvantage. Lily's eyes were red. So what should I do? Just let it go? Of course not. We can't let it go. My eyes shifted and my tone changed. But we need a strategy. Sister-in-law, why do you think these children dare to bully Chen? Is it really because they're naughty? No, it's because the school's culture isn't good, because there are loopholes in the school's management. What good is it to target just one child? We need to target the root cause. I looked at her and slowly said, I suggest you contact the parents of other children in the class. I don't believe Chen is the only one being bullied. You can organize everyone and say that the current school environment is too bad, that children don't feel safe at school. Let's all sign a petition to the Department of Education, demanding that the school rectify its academic culture. This, feint to the east, strike to the west, strategy immediately gave Lily a new direction. Compared to arguing with a stubborn parent, representing justice and petitioning on behalf of the people further satisfied her heroism. She immediately took action, passionately speaking in the parents' group, cleverly packaging her son's act of hitting someone as an act of resistance against school bullying. The focus of the conflict successfully shifted from Chen hitting someone and being ridiculed for his flat head to the larger, more ambiguous issue of poor school culture. And the true victim, Chen, was once again swallowed by his mother's battle. He sat alone in a corner, clutching his head. No one asked if he was hurt, and no one cared why he lashed out. The school upheaval finally ended with an apology and increased school management, and Lily achieved a great victory. To prove the correctness of her Flathead brings good fortune theory, and to clear her son's name at school, she came up with a bold idea: to organize a Flathead cultural festival in the neighborhood. When she eagerly told me about this plan, I almost burst out laughing. A cultural festival? Yes. Lily's face lit up with a peculiar glow. I'll rent the neighborhood's central square, set up a stage. I'll invite all the mothers who support flatheads to come. Everyone can share their experiences of raising flat-headed children. We'll even organize activities, like voting for the most beautiful flat-headed baby, and invite performers so everyone can see how outstanding and blessed our flat-headed babies are. The absurdity of this idea surpassed normal understanding, but I expressed my 12-part support for her. Sister-in-law, this idea is absolutely brilliant. It's truly groundbreaking, I praised. This is no longer just sharing parenting experiences. This is creating a culture, a kind of confidence, a positive, flathead culture. You are demonstrating this to a group of people. Under my flattery, Lily grew even more enthusiastic. She funded it herself, solicited sponsorships, made posters, and was tirelessly busy. And I, in the shadows, revealed this strange story to a few media reporters I knew. I didn't exaggerate or add any embellishments, simply describing the events objectively. A mother who believes in the blessing of a flathead is about to organize the first Flathead Cultural Festival in the neighborhood to prove it to her son. News with such a conflicting and absurd angle would not be ignored by the media. On the day of the Flathead Cultural Festival, the neighborhood square was packed with people, even more bustling than Lily had anticipated. Not only were there the flathead mothers she had invited and curious neighbors, but also several groups of reporters with cameras and camcorders. Lily, wearing a red cheongsam, stood on the makeshift stage, holding a microphone, passionately promoting her philosophy. Below the stage, Chen, as the representative, fortune baby, wore a large red flower, standing there lifelessly. In the middle of the event, an incident occurred. A young mother, interviewed by a reporter, openly questioned the flathead parenting method. "I think this is completely pseudoscience. It's harming children. Do you people doing this consider the psychological well-being of your children when they grow up?" This question was like a stone thrown into a pan of oil. Lily immediately argued with that mother right there on stage. "What do you know? This is the manifestation of someone without good fortune. You're just jealous." She held the microphone, her voice blaring through the loudspeakers, piercing and out of control, echoing across the square. The reporter's flashbulbs continuously flashed, capturing her arguing face and Chen's bewildered, helpless expression below the stage. The cultural festival, which was supposed to be a positive promotional event, had completely turned into a public farce and a trial by public opinion. The next day, the headlines of major social news sites all featured Lily's distorted face with titles like "Absurd Flathead Cultural Festival," "A Stubborn Frenzy in the Name of Love." Lily became famous again, only this time she was nailed to the pillar of shame for her ignorance and stubbornness. My nephew, at 10 years old, entered puberty. His flat head issue, along with the shaping development of his skull, became even more pronounced. Viewed from behind, his head was almost a straight line, without any curve. At school, he became a complete outsider, friendless, with his academic performance at the bottom of the class. Lily ignored all this. After the disastrous failure of the Flathead Cultural Festival, she not only failed to reflect, but blamed all failures on the ignorant world failing to recognize true gold. She came up with a new idea: borrowing a corpse to resurrect the soul. Since the public didn't understand, let capital acknowledge her. She wanted to package Chen as a flat-headed fortune baby, to be a brand ambassador. "Think about it," she declared to me. "Chen's head shape is so distinctive, how high would his recognition be? there are surely brands that would love this concept of good fortune. For example, companies selling nutritional supplements or educational products for children could all collaborate. Once we have a brand ambassador, our value will be proven. I looked at her wild plan, a cold smile in my heart, but on my lips I said, "Sister-in-law, this idea is very novel. However, I think the target could be a bit more precise. Instead of looking for unrelated things, why not go directly to baby pillow manufacturers? Think about it, Chen is the best example of sleeping into good fortune. They could totally launch a Chen version fortune pillow. This would be a perfect match." Lily was enlightened. She thanked me profusely. While she eagerly prepared her business plan and advertising models, I, through friends in the industry, contacted several famous domestic baby pillow manufacturers. I provided them with Lily's story, treating it as a case of reverse marketing. Currently, there's a real-life case of improper pillow use leading to severe head deformities. The mother is trying to package this deformity as good fortune to seek commercial collaboration. I believe this is a fantastic opportunity, I told the marketing director of one manufacturer. You can fully capitalize on this event, organize a community science popularization activity about caring for the head shape health of infants. In the activity, you can, without directly naming anyone, refer to this negative case, and then naturally launch your professional ergonomic baby pillows. This can both hit competitors, meaning those shaping pillows, and build your brand's professional and responsible image. The manufacturers were overjoyed. So, when Lily, full of hope, knocked on the doors of various manufacturers with Chen, she only received polite but firm rejections. Not only that, she quickly discovered that a wave of scientific popularization against flatheads was sweeping the market. Mom and baby platforms and pillow brands were vigorously promoting the importance of scientific parenting, using 3D models and expert interviews to demonstrate the potential dangers of flatheads to a child's development. At the end of one advertisement, the lonely silhouette of a flat-headed boy even appeared, accompanied by the caption, "Don't let ignorance become your child's lifelong shadow." That silhouette was astonishingly similar to Chen. Lily was furious, trembling with anger. She couldn't understand why the whole world was against her, but she remained undeterred. In her stubborn world, this was merely the final test before good fortune descended. In this grand web I had meticulously woven, every clue was laid, every role was cast. Lily's stubbornness, Chen's pain, my brother's weakness, my mother's indifference all were sliding along the trajectory I had set, towards the inevitable abyss. It was time for me, the director, to retreat backstage. I applied for a university project that offered an opportunity for a 3-year academic exchange in England. When I announced this news to my family, Lily's reaction was the strongest. "You're leaving? For 3 years?" She seemed to lose her anchor, her face filled with panic. "So, if you leave, what will happen to our Chen? Who will help me with ideas after this?" Over the years, she had grown accustomed to coming to me with problems, accustomed to hearing the exquisitely packaged advice I offered. I had become her sole ally and moral support on her path of stubbornness. I looked at her, offering a smile that was both apologetic and blessing. "Sister-in-law, this departure of mine isn't just for my own academic research." I fabricated a perfect reason. I heard that some ancient European aristocrats also placed great importance on head shape and physiognomy. This trip, I also want to conveniently investigate the cross-cultural exchange and development of flathead culture internationally. Who knows, I might even find a path for Chen's future to reach the world stage. Then, I took her hand and solemnly said, "Furthermore, Chen is grown up now. True good fortune requires him to conquer it himself. Whether I'm here or not, his blessings won't diminish at all. Just rest assured at home, wait for my good news, and wait for Chen to soar high." These words once again reassured Lily. She saw new hope in my departure, the hope of internationalization. On the day of my flight, the whole family came to see me off. Through the security gate, I saw Lily still eagerly talking to Chen, while Chen kept his head down, not saying a word. I waved to her, muttering a silent phrase, "May your good fortune reach the sky, sister-in-law." Then I turned my back without looking back, walking towards the boarding gate, towards my new life. The home behind me, that feud, would become a play about to conclude on my distant homeland. My departure completely severed Lily's channel for seeking external professional support. From now on, all her decisions could only originate from her own head, filled with stubbornness and ignorance. At the same time, This also meant Chen completely lost a potential object of appeal. Although I had never given him actual help, nominally, I was still his educated and knowledgeable aunt. Now this aunt was gone. In his darkest future, when he would most need a lifeline, he would find no one by his side. My life in England was calm and fulfilling. I poured all my mind into my research, published articles, attended academic conferences, completely pushing the messy affairs of the Chen family out of my head. Until one day, 3 years later, I received an urgent call from my brother. On the other end, his voice was hoarse and anxious. "Victoria, Chen is missing." My heart stirred slightly. Chen was 15 this year, right at the most rebellious age of adolescence. "What happened? Tell me." My voice was calm. "Isn't it because of his head?" My brother's voice was filled with a barely contained fury. "He's in junior high, a sensitive age for appearance. Yesterday he got into a fight with a classmate, came home, and had a huge argument with his mother, saying it was all her fault, that she ruined his life and made him unable to hold his head high. And then he ran away from home and hasn't returned yet." Lily's faint wailing could be heard through the phone. One could imagine the chaos in that house. A child suppressed for a long time, treated as an instrument of good fortune. His rebellion, once it erupts, would surely be destructive. "Have you called the police?" I asked. "Yes, the police said they're checking cameras and told us to wait for news. Victoria, please come back. You have so many ideas. Come back and help us think of something." My brother was practically begging. Come back? How could I come back? The climax of this play, I had to savor it from a safe, distant place. "Brother, don't rush." I feigned concern, but in reality, I began my distant salvation strategy. "Chen is a child with great blessings. Have you forgotten? The proverb says, 'He who is blessed is naturally protected by deities.' He'll be fine. He's probably just temporarily upset and went out to clear his head." I intentionally repeated the words Lily liked to hear most, but this time, coming from my mouth, they were laced with bitter irony. At this moment, the more everyone searches everywhere, the more you pressure him, the further he might run. Everyone must trust him, trust his good fortune. Just wait at home. Who knows, he might come back on his own. My brother was silent on the other end. He, of course, knew how absurd these words were, but these words had been his wife's creed for more than a decade. I refused to return home, only expressing concern and belief from afar. I even sent a text message to the family group chat. "Sister-in-law, don't worry. This is a predetermined tribulation in Chen's destiny. Overcoming it will lead to vast skies and wide seas. This is the final test before his good fortune is realized. What we need to do is trust him." These words of mine, for my brother who was burning with anxiety, were like adding fuel to the fire. But for Lily, who had lost all spirit, they were like a drowning person grasping at the last straw. She stopped wailing and began to mumble. "Yes, Victoria is right, this is a test. My son is protected by deities, he will be fine." She began to refuse cooperation with the police, even preventing my brother from searching, instead staying home to burn incense and pray to Buddha, begging the deities to bring her blessed son back. My brother and she had an unprecedented argument because of this. A family, because of the child's running away and a few distant pieces of advice from me, had completely fallen into civil war. And that runaway teenager. At the moment, he needed his family's support and searched the most, his mother chose to believe in illusory blessings. How twisted this was, and how much it was a karmic retribution. Chen wandered outside for a week, then was found by the police in an internet cafe. After being brought home, he had completely changed. He no longer argued or resisted, he had simply become quieter, like a deep, dry well without a bottom. His return did not soothe the family conflict. Instead, it pushed it to a breaking point. My brother, Frank, looking at his son, who was lost and then found, but now seemed like a rotten piece of wood, finally unleashed all the resentment accumulated over more than a decade. He and Lily began endless arguments. The focus of the arguments was no longer whether a flat head brought good fortune, but what have you done to our son over the years? During one fierce argument, Lily finally found a new outlet for her anger. She pointed at my brother and yelled, "It's all your sister's fault, Victoria's." If she hadn't constantly praised Chen's head back then, talking about revitalizing Fang Long, would I have been so stubborn? It was her, she pretended to agree, secretly sabotaging Chen's good fortune. Although this logic was absurd, it helped her find a perfect excuse to blame. I, the mastermind abroad, had become the scapegoat for all her foolish actions. When my brother recounted these words to me, his voice was utterly exhausted. I listened, merely smiling faintly. I knew it was time to add another spark, to completely burn down the last pillar of this family. I didn't directly refute. That would only make them direct their conflict at me. I used my academic standing to begin posting a series of articles about family education and superstition on my personal social media and several influential cultural platforms. I didn't mention my own family. I simply used the objective perspective of a researcher to analyze cases. When, for the child's benefit, becomes a curse, how superstition in parenting ruins a child. From flathead fortune to child prodigy delusion, piercing through the ignorance and stubbornness in modern families. The psychological death of a child, a family tragedy under long-term mental oppression. Each article was like a precise scalpel, dissecting a fictional case that had an extremely similar experience to Chen's. I described in detail how that child, due to the parent's superstition, was gradually destroyed from physical to psychological, ultimately leading to the family's collapse. These articles, with their academic prestige and the realistic feel of the cases, sparked widespread social discussion. I subtly shared the links to these articles in the family group chat. My brother read them silently, my mother read them, sighing. And Lily, she couldn't help but read them. When she saw the descriptions that exactly mirrored her own behavior, saw the ignorance analyzed to its core by science and psychology, saw the broken family outcome in that fictional case, I believe an unprecedented fear would arise from the depths of her heart, like vines tightening around it. I was pulling the rug out from under her, not her stubbornness, but the false psychological facade she had built for her stubbornness. I'm doing all this for my child. At 18, Chen barely scraped into a third-tier university. University, which should have been a place for young people to liberate themselves, became a spiritual prison for Chen. He didn't dare to look others in the eye, didn't dare to speak in crowds. In class, he always sat in the farthest corner. Before long, he showed clear signs of depression, suffering from insomnia all night, and even began self-harming. His academic advisor met with Lily, suggesting she take him to a psychiatrist. By this point, Lily had been tormented by my articles and the harsh reality to the extent that her inner world was shaken. But over a decade of stubbornness made her still put up a brave front. My son is just introverted. This is a manifestation of deep good fortune, she told outsiders. But behind closed doors, she secretly sought information about psychiatrists. I had one last task. I leveraged the academic influence and media resources I had accumulated over the years. I collaborated with several leading psychologists and adolescent education experts in the country to organize an online seminar. The topic of the seminar was a new term I had coined, flathead syndrome. I analyzed the origins and evolution of flathead aesthetics from a historical and cultural perspective. Sociologists analyzed the collective anxiety hidden beneath this aesthetic. And psychologists focused on discussing the psychological problems arising from the physiological characteristics of a flathead: enduring discrimination, bullying during growth, low self-esteem, social anxiety, depression, and even personality disorders. We systematized this phenomenon and named it flathead syndrome. This seminar, thanks to its unique topic and deep social relevance, attracted significant attention. Flathead syndrome, a term imbued with academic authority, quickly spread online. It helped countless individuals who had once felt self-conscious about their flatheads find empathy, and it also made society seriously acknowledge for the first time this mental health issue caused by aesthetic preference. When Lily took Chen to the psychiatrist's office, after listening to her account, the doctor pushed up his glasses and, in a professional tone, said, "Your son's condition aligns very well with the typical characteristics of flathead syndrome recently proposed by the academic community." When this term was uttered by an authoritative doctor, when it was placed before her as a disease recognized by society and academia, Lily's last psychological defense wall completely crumbled. The good fortune she had always been proud of now became a publicly discussed illness. She became the creator of this illness. I, who she had once criticized as the destroyer of good fortune, now became the authority defining her son's pain. In this 18-year-long war, I had finally transformed from a passive avenger to the master of the game, becoming the one who set the rules. The university environment finally offered freedom. While undergoing psychological treatment, Chen also began seeking answers in the world of libraries and the internet. He encountered human anatomy, child development psychology. He encountered the scientific knowledge I had tried to convey to his mother years ago, only to have it dismissed as hollow. Knowledge, like a ray of light, finally shone into his dark, 18-year-long sealed world. He began to realize that the source of all his pain was not a test before good fortune, but a tragedy entirely orchestrated by ignorance. He began to try to contact me on social media. At first, they were just probing inquiries. Then he started asking some questions about history and folk customs. Auntie, in the Qing dynasty, did people really consider sleeping with a flat head beautiful? Why? Chen was also seeking a verdict for his mother and a verdict for his own life. I did not directly answer his questions, nor did I criticize Lily. I merely, as a history professor, used a gentle storytelling approach to speak with him. I told him about the brutal history of 3-inch foot binding that mutilated women's bodies in ancient times. I told him about the tragedy in medieval Europe when people used all sorts of absurd methods to torture patients to expel demons. I told him about the folk wisdom that believed children's urine could cure all diseases, causing permanent harm to children. Each story pointed to a core truth. When ignorance and stubbornness are cloaked in the name of tradition, or for the child's benefit, how much damage can they cause? Chen, history does not repeat itself, but the weaknesses of human nature always recur, I calmly told him during a voice call. Many times the perpetrators don't believe they are doing evil. They are even more convinced than the victims that they are doing good, bestowing blessings. This kindness, driven by ignorance, is often more destructive than pure malice. On the other end, there was a prolonged silence. A long time later, I heard a choked sob. It was the first time in 18 years that he wasn't crying over his own misfortune, but crying over the absurdity of his life. He had awakened, not by my awakening him, but by the knowledge, by the truth he found and awakened himself. This was even more profound and also more cruel than if I had told him everything directly. Chen's awakening brought about a transformative change. He channeled all his pain and confusion into research motivation. Under my guidance, he began to leverage his sociological knowledge, combined with history, culture, psychology, and various other perspectives, to formally begin researching the flat head culture phenomenon. The topic of his graduation thesis was on the formation, influence, and contemporary structure of the flat head worship phenomenon. He used himself as the core case, employing an objective, almost cruel tone to dissect 18 years of his life. He analyzed the family environment, social pressure, and individual psychological evolution, transforming himself into a sociological research specimen. This thesis, thanks to its unique perspective and deep self-analysis, received very high praise and was even recommended for publication in a prestigious academic journal. Chen, the teenager who once dared not raise his head because of his flat head, for the first time achieved academic recognition and accomplishment because of his flat head. When he brought home the journal containing his thesis, Lily's expression was incredibly complex. She didn't understand those profound theories, but she understood the words excellent graduation thesis and published in an academic journal. On her tear-stained face, a strange smile even appeared. I told you. Our Chen is blessed with good fortune, she mumbled as if hypnotizing herself. Look, after all this, isn't it still thanks to this head that my son achieved something? This blessing just manifested in a different way. Substituting concepts, this was the last rung on the ladder she sought for herself. She tried to explain her son's painful research as another manifestation of good fortune. Chen looked at her without arguing, his eyes filled with unprecedented calm and sorrow. He knew you could never wake someone who pretends to sleep. He simply placed another stack of documents on the table, consultation materials for head reconstructive surgery. Lily's smile froze on her face. Son, what are you doing? Her voice trembled. Mother, your good fortune. I don't need it anymore. Chen looked at her, speaking each word clearly. Now, I want to return to being a normal person. After graduation, Chen chose not to pursue higher education, but became a social worker, joining a nonprofit organization specializing in intervening in unhealthy family education and promoting science. He used his personal experience to help children like himself, who had previously lived under the stubborn shadow of their parents. He spoke with sincerity, his gaze resolute. That melancholic teenager seemed to have been buried in the past. In the second year after I returned home, he actively sought to meet me. In a coffee shop, he sat opposite me, thin but with a straight back. We were silent for a long time. "Auntie," he began, his voice slightly hoarse, "I remember what happened in my past life." My hand holding the coffee cup didn't move. "I'm sorry." He bowed deeply, his shoulders trembling slightly. "I know an apology means nothing. I don't know how to make amends." I watched him silently, his anguish and regret seemed truly genuine. But I had lived 2 lives, had I not seen too many disguises of human nature? I asked calmly. He looked up, his eyes filled with burning expectation. "Auntie, you're so educated and influential. Together, we can help so many more people. You can provide academic support, and I'll do the practical implementation." "We can." I interrupted him. "Chen, are you asking for my forgiveness, or are you looking for a powerful partner for your public service career?" His words stopped abruptly, a hint of hard-to-discern confusion flashing across his face. I smiled coldly in my heart. He had indeed changed, but that subtle self-interest, rooted in the Chen family, had not completely disappeared. His regret was real, but after that regret, his desire to involve me, to leverage my resources and influence to achieve his career, was also real. He hoped to achieve self-salvation through atonement while also realizing his social value. There was nothing wrong with this, but why should I become a stepping stone on his path to salvation? I neither accepted his apology nor refused his offer. I simply smiled at him, a smile he didn't understand, but one full of unspoken meaning. "Your idea is very meaningful. However, I'm very busy these days." I raised my coffee cup and took a sip. "You should demonstrate it with action first, prove it to me and prove it to yourself. As for the future, let's talk about the future then." I presented an empty fortress, expressing no attitude, making no promises, no refusals, no closeness. I left all his enthusiasm, regret, and plans there. In my past life, he caused my death with open eyes. In this life, I will make him crave what he cannot have. You want my forgiveness? Fine, use the rest of your life to pay the debt. After being rejected by me, Chen did not give up. He focused all his energy on his work. He traveled to many remote villages, encountering countless children tormented by superstition and ignorance. He saw children locked in sheds because they were believed to have hard fates that clashed with their relatives, and sick children who were not taken to the hospital but forced to drink incense water. There was also a little girl who, because of a birthmark, was considered an ill omen and was abused from a young age. These vivid, tragic cases, even more so than his own, were like a heavy hammer constantly striking his soul. He began to compile these cases anonymously and then shared them with Lily. He no longer argued with her, nor did he mention his own pain. Instead, like an outsider, he calmly recounted other people's stories. "Mom, today I met a little girl." Her mother, following a fortune teller's words, said that the mole on the girl's soul meant a life of hardship. To change her fate, the mother used a hot iron to burn off that piece of flesh. "Mom, there was a boy whose father believed his unclosed fontanelle meant he was an immortal reborn, so he forbade the boy from speaking to mortals. Every day, he made the boy stay home and chant scriptures. That child has now even lost normal language function." Each story was like a mirror reflecting Lily's past self. Finally, after Chen recounted the story of a child who was forced to become left-handed, leading to severe stuttering and psychological disorders, Lily broke down. "Stop, stop," she cried, covering her ears. Chen walked up to her, squatted down. For the first time, he deliberately pushed back his bangs, revealing a faint scar at the corner of his forehead, a result of self-harm. Then, in an incredibly calm voice, he uttered the words he had long harbored. "Mom, if I hadn't run away from home that year, if I hadn't gone to university." This suffering flesh strategy, using his own scarred life, finally elicited the mother's most thorough regret. Lily looked at the scar on her son's forehead and could no longer deceive herself. All her efforts, defenses, and justifications shattered at that moment. She hugged her son, crying heartbrokenly, almost fainting. "It's Mother's fault. I'm sorry, my child. It's all my fault." She finally, for the first time, fully admitted her mistakes. Although in this 20-year late repentance, there was still a strong element of self-justification to beg her son's forgiveness. But for Chen, that was enough. Lily's repentance did not bring him release. Instead, it pushed him into a new difficult situation. Encouraged by Chen, she gathered all her courage and publicly posted an apology letter on a media outlet that had once interviewed her. She admitted the absurdity of her past parenting methods and called on parents to believe in science and not be blinded by feudal superstitions. She had thought this was a liberation and redemption, but she forgot she was once the flathead guru. Her apology letter was nothing short of a betrayal. Where are the people who once cheered for her? Now she says it was wrong. Did she take money from those pillow companies? Intentionally slandering our flat-headed babies. The online abuse and criticism were even more intense than the attacks she had endured when promoting flathead culture years ago. She went from a hero to a traitor, alienated from both sides. The immense public pressure and internal conflict completely broke her down. She began to doubt herself, doubt her life, spending her days crying. Her mental state became extremely unstable, and my brother Frank in this family storm had exhausted all his patience and affection. He looked at his crazy wife, looked at his son whom she had ruined and then tried to fix, and then looked at this broken family. He finally made a decision. He proposed divorce to Lily. "I've had enough over the years," he said wearily. "We can't live like this anymore." Lily blamed all her misfortunes on this belated repentance. She began to argue and cry with my brother, saying he was abandoning her at her weakest moment. The family crack was too wide, irreparable. And I, as the one behind this play, was not idle either. I continued to publish articles in academic circles. This time, my research direction shifted from the impact of superstition in parenting on children to a sociological analysis of the impact of superstition in parenting on family relationships. I argued how this stubborn behavior destroyed trust between husband and wife, tore apart parent-child relationships, and ultimately led to the disintegration of the family structure. My articles were calm, objective, full of academic rigor, but every word was like a precise judgment being written for my brother's and Lily's marriage. I used my professional knowledge as an invisible, indirect scalpel to sever the last remnants of affection between them. To completely escape the psychological shadow cast by his flat head and to put an end to his past, Chen finally entered a cosmetic surgery hospital. He underwent head reshaping surgery. This was a type of filling surgery involving the implantation of material under the scalp to improve the curve of the back of the head. The surgery carried significant risks, had a long recovery period, and limited effectiveness. It couldn't perfectly transform into a completely round head. But Chen was resolute. For him, this was not for beauty but a ritual of self-recreation, a farewell to the past. On the day of the surgery, Lily and Frank both waited outside the operating room. They had already signed their divorce papers, but temporarily maintained an outward peace for their son's surgery. When Chen was wheeled out of the operating room, his head heavily bandaged, his complexion pale, Lily could no longer suppress her emotions. She looked at her son, who had endured such pain and great risk to change a deformity she herself had caused. That deeply etched regret finally transformed into tears of despair. She knelt by the hospital bed, weeping uncontrollably. This time, there was no self-justification, only pure, desperate remorse. This was perhaps the first true awakening in her life. Chen merely looked at her calmly, his eyes devoid of hatred or forgiveness, only the weariness of things having run their course. This suffering flesh, strategy orchestrated by him, finally elicited his mother's most thorough regret. The cost was a long scar that would forever remain on his body. Not long after, my brother and Lily officially completed their divorce proceedings, sold their house, divided their assets, and went their separate ways. Lily moved back to her mother's home. Her mental state was reportedly fluctuating. My brother, Frank, rented a small apartment alone, living a quiet but lonely life. As for Chen, he didn't side with either. He used the money he had saved from his own work to rent a small apartment. The back of his head now had a slight curve, though still not perfect for him, it was enough. He changed his hairstyle, wore glasses, and looked like a normal, scholarly young man. He continued to dedicate himself to his public service career, using his knowledge and energy to illuminate the world of children like his past self, trapped in the stubborn shadows of their parents. He had gained a new life through a catastrophic and determined path. The story of the Chen family had concluded, and my life had only just begun a new chapter. After returning home, I leveraged my research achievements abroad and continuous academic influence to become a renowned young scholar in the field of domestic cultural and historical studies. My works were translated into multiple languages. My lectures were often packed. My life was no longer bound by the chains of the past. That 20-year-long revenge felt like completing a long and complex thesis. I set the topic, gathered materials, built rigorous arguments step by step, and finally arrived at the conclusion I desired. Now that the thesis was complete, I placed it on a high shelf, never looking back. At an international cultural seminar broadcast live globally, I, as the keynote speaker, delivered the closing speech. The topic of my speech was echoes of history, dross in traditional culture and parental anxiety in modern society. I stood under the spotlight, facing scholars and elites from around the world, fluently speaking English about ancient tragedies caused by superstition and ignorance. I spoke of 3-inch foot binding, of bloody weddings, of families destroyed by charms and prophecies. At the end of my speech, I changed my tone. The tragedies of history have never truly gone away. They merely don modern cloaks, hiding beside us. Today, we no longer bind feet, but are we using starting line anxiety to wrap our children's childhoods in invisible foot bandages? We no longer believe in charms, but are we using the templates of successism to mutilate the unique souls of our children? We ridicule the ignorance of the ancients, but are we enchanted by all sorts of scientifically labeled and elite parenting spiritual food? Ladies and gentlemen, I looked down at the auditorium, my voice clear and strong. True cultural inheritance is discarding the dross and preserving the essence. True love should not be the protagonist of new era tragedies. The speech ended. The entire hall erupted in prolonged, ceaseless applause. I stood on the stage, bowing slightly, the sunlight streaming through the large window, warm and brilliant. My life had finally shed its skin, escaping the shell named hatred. I did not become a vengeful demon. I merely reclaimed the life I should have had, and, in my own way, made the world hear a warning bell from the depths of history. As for the members of the Chen family, they would live the rest of their lives amidst the ruins they themselves created. And I would carry my new life forward to a broader horizon.